Welcome back. Let's now have a look at the different higher education systems. In English-speaking countries, we're going to focus on the British and the American system. When I say higher education, I mean university, okay, or also called college, okay? So let's have a look first at what is happening in the UK at university level. In the UK, universities are independent and they select their students according to their marks, to their grades, especially according to their A-level grades. So to get into a university, you have to have certain A-level grades. So the students in their last year of secondary school apply to different universities, and then they either get rejected or they get accepted. Providing they get a high enough mark in their A-levels. Most students end up going to universities that are far away from home, so they end up living on campus, or they end up sharing a house or a flat with other students in the town where they are studying. You know that the two most famous universities in the UK are Oxford and Cambridge. Those universities try to be a little bit more meritocratic, that is to say, they try to select students on their merit, they have interviews, etc., rather than on their money or where they come from, which secondary school they have attended, etc. So they try to be more and more meritocratic, but they are still deeply elitists and linked to power. Okay, so often the students attending Oxford or Cambridge, there's an expression that says Oxbridge. Okay, it's either one or the other, and if you have an Oxbridge education, that is to say you went to a very prestigious university. So these students who are Oxbridge students often come from public schools. Very famous public schools. I'll say a word about public schools in a minute, but just to keep talking about universities in the UK, just know that tuition fees have recently trebled. That is to say, they have been multiplied by 3 in the UK. In 2010, they went from, on average, £3,000 a year to £9,000 a year. This in 2010 led to very violent student riots in London to protest against this new law, but the law was passed anyway, regardless of the riots. Let's go back to public school. What is a public school in the British system? This is a very important term that you have to know because it's a bit misleading. It's a faux ami. A public school means, in fact, a private school. More than private school, it means a very selective, very elitist, very expensive private school. For example, you have secondary schools in the UK that can cost up to £20,000 a year to go to high school, to a secondary school. So those are very selective. A very famous one is Eton, for example. It's where most of the UK's Prime Minister have gone to school, and then they follow on going to Cambridge or Oxford. So usually the students going to those prestigious universities come from those very selective, very expensive private schools. So they not only select those public schools students on their capacities, on their skills, but also, unfortunately, on their means, on their incomes, because to be able to afford a £20,000 tuition fee to go to high school is not for everyone. So very famous, again, public schools, Eton, Harrow Rugby, this famous place where the sports rugby was created. Let's have a look now at what is going on in the US at university level, at college level. As in the UK, to get into a university, the students have to have a certain mark, a certain grade for their ACT. ACT is the American equivalent to the A-levels, which is the British equivalent to the baccalaureate. So the Scholastic Aptitude Test, SAT, is what you sit for at the end of high school in the US, and depending on your marks, on your grade, you are either accepted or rejected in the university of your choice. So there is a wide range of levels in the US when you talk about universities. There are what are called community colleges. They are also called junior colleges. They are usually a short studies, usually 2-year programs that are more based on professional needs. So they are more like vocational universities, if you like. So you can go to a very cheap community college in your area, or you can go to very prestigious universities, and also prestigious means very expensive as well, such as Harvard, on the East Coast, or Berkeley on the West Coast of the US. In the US, there are both state-funded and private universities. And there are universities that are funded by both the public and the private sectors. But with the 2008 crisis, the subprime crisis, and the economic problems that followed, the states and the federal government tend to put less and less funds in higher education. So universities in the US have to ask more and more money from their students. That is to say, tuition fees have tended to rise. There are, although these tuition fees are very high and they can reach up to $35,000 a year at very prestigious universities, many students can get grants, scholarships, or most of them take loans, and this is what we'll see in class, and they pay back these loans when they start working, when they start having a real job. Of course, many students also work at a temporary job while studying. Some of them are babysitters, or they work in cafes or in restaurants, in bars, etc., in supermarkets, to be able to fund their studies. We saw the two systems, the British system and the US system, that are quite similar, but the US system is characterized by the amount of money that is asked by the universities to the students, which is very high. Let's have a look at very quickly, let's mention Australia, which has an in-between system. In Australia, the higher education system is very similar to the American one, but it's interesting to notice that it used to be completely free, like it is in France, for example. And tuition fees were abolished in 1974, so not long ago, but then they were reintroduced in 1989. So they were temporarily abolished, and then they came back. So now it's also quite expensive to study in an Australian university, although not as expensive as it is in America. Let's have a look now at a few words that are very important and that you'll need to know when talking about higher education. Again, college is an American English synonym of university. Okay, you go to college means you go to university. In the UK, they tend to say going to uni. You go to uni. Okay, je vais à la fac. And a college is in fact a component of a university. So in fact, a college, the translation in French would be faculté. Faculté is a component of a wider institution, which is a university. Here again, be careful because there are several words that are faux amis. Faculty is one. A faculty is in fact a professor at university. The faculty members are the teaching staff of a university, a college. The term teacher is used for secondary or primary education. The term professor is used for higher education, that is university. You'll often hear the expression undergraduate student. What is an undergraduate student? It's a student who has not yet graduated. That is to say, who is studying in an undergraduate program and who is aiming at getting a bachelor's degree, une licence. So it's a student, an undergraduate student. He's a student who does not have his bachelor degree yet. Then you have a graduate student who has passed his bachelor degree and who's now studying in a graduate program, either to do a master's degree, a master, or a PhD later on, and doctorat. Another faux ami, in the US, there are many polytechnic institutes. These are elite American technological universities, and some of them are, some universities have the word technology in their names. For example, the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and polytechnic universities or similar names are generally research-intensive universities. They focus on research, on science, all kinds of sciences, not only physics, math, etc., but also linguistics, literature, and these universities focus largely on research. Also, another example is another name that you should know is what is called the Ivy League. This is a typical American expression. The Ivy League is a group of the oldest and the most prestigious universities in the US. They are in the northeast of the USA. These universities, you may know some of them, are Brown, Columbia in New York, Cornell, Dartmouth, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, the University of Pennsylvania, etc., etc. When you talk about what you are doing, that you are in prépa, you have to say prépa because there's no equivalent in the English-speaking world. And when you say that you are studying to get into a grande école, you have to say grande école because, again, there is no equivalent in the English-speaking world. They are typically French institutions, and you have to use the French terms when talking about them. I'll conclude in the next video with the assessment and ranking systems. See you soon.